Welcome to Ranting and Raving. The Saints did a thing. Even better, the Saints did a thing that makes sense, shows planning for the future, and a realistic view of where they are as an organization. The Saints get a cookie. No, really, this is a good thing. We've been on a slow incline towards a more optimistic beat over the last couple of postings, simply because after not getting Captain Air Hump, thank God, I enjoy being a Saints fan, and I'm glad I still get to be one. The team has quite obviously pivoted to, okay, it's a soft reset. We're not going to blow everything up. We've got way too much talent, way too much still relatively young and productive talent, but we're not just a piece or two away, and we need to take a 2 to 3 year approach. And this is actually called good planning. You cannot have good planning without objective, realistic analysis of where you stand. Wide receiver is a disaster. It's terrible. Tight end is poor. Offensive tackle is highly concerning. On defense, safety is now a question. Linebacker, you've got one young guy, but you still got a lot of age there. You could use more good players. Bonfire is on fire. Get him out. So like there are holes on the roster. Defensive tackle, although Street's a nice signing, but still, like you need more players, you need more talent. So the reality is this isn't the 2018 roster. You're not a piece or two away, and you know they needed to make moves. They need to add talent to the roster. So here's what they did: they traded this year's pick, the number 18 overall pick, one of the compensatory thirds they had from this year, number 101, next year's first, and the year after's second. And I'm clarifying the timeline because we're going to get into this here in a second. This is actually why I like the trade as much as I do, because of the distribution of those picks. And they did that in order to get number 16 and 19 in this year's draft, which is actually super important. So before we get into the whole timeline thing and why I love the clear intention around the scheme of how they did the trade, how they distributed the assets that they had to give up in order to get these two picks, let's just talk about the two picks. So here's the big thing that they've done. Number one, they've ensured that if there is a player in the top 10, possibly even in the top 5, who they love, they have the ammo to go get them. They did not have that ammo. And it is actually valuable to make that trade before draft day than after. Here's the reason why. Draft day trades, yes, a lot of these things happen on the day of the draft, but value is also fluid, and also there's urgency. You have to come to an agreement in a very short period of time. And if you're trying to move up, you don't necessarily have the leverage. And if you have to go get more ammo from someone else, you only have a limited amount of time. So what they have done is they have ensured that they now have the ammo, or in the event they want to move up. If they want to jump in front of Carolina to go get Malik Willis because they love him and they think he's going to be a superstar quarterback for the next 12, 15 years, and they want him to have a year behind Jameis, and then Jameis can go off into the sunset and Malik's going to be the new guy, great. You have the ammo to go get him. You don't need to potentially get fleeced or worry about someone else agreeing to something ahead of time to give you the ammo to go get him. You already have it. So they have the flexibility of being able to be buyers, to go upside, to go towards the best players that they could have at the most important position, but they also have 2 picks in the top 20. So in the event where they don't go get Malik, they can take one of those picks, say 16, package it with something else, another third, another second, whether this year or another year, move up a few more picks, jump somebody else, go get a Kenny Pickett if they really love him, but then keep 19. So now you can get a young quarterback of the future and another wide receiver of the future to pair with Michael Thomas. So that quarterback now has skill position players he can grow with, and you can pair these players together. So you can ensure you get a wide receiver who's going to fit the quarterback you get, and they can grow together. That's super important. Super, super important. And even beyond that, their worst case is you have 2 picks in the top 20. So you have the ability to get high-end talent. If they don't grab a quarterback, and by the way, this is my preferred outcome. Outside of going up to get Malik Willis, if they love him, they have a vision for him, you go get him. You still have this year's second, so you can still get a good wide receiver to pair with him. So you're not out of the water there. But in the event they don't do that, this is my preferred outcome is I would like to get either Ritter or Howell, either in the second or ideally trade up to the bottom of the first, take a second and a third, pair those together, go get that guy, get him at the bottom of the first, 31, 32, because you want that fifth-year option. But then take a tackle and a wide receiver. So tackle and wide receiver with the 16th and the 19th pick. Because if you do that, potentially you end up with 3 first-round picks. But even if you end up with 2 first-round picks and a second-round pick, that is completely worth those assets. If you get a tackle of the future, a wide receiver, number 2, could be a number 1. Like say you get Jamison Williams at 16 and a really good tackle at 19. And then you trade up towards the bottom of the first, we're being hypothetical here, and you get either Ritter or Howell, who I don't think there's a gap between Ritter, Howell, and Pickett as far as prospects. I think there's a gap between them on their readiness to play in a professional offense today, but you already have a bridge quarterback in place, and he's on a prove-it deal. If he's a stud and you really love him, you can go all the way to that second year, still have 3 years left on that rookie because you have the fifth-year option, and can decide if you want to keep playing with Jameis or you want to let Jameis go. If you love Jameis, you can move the rookie. You can now regain those assets you gave up. Again, this is about flexibility. This is about leveraging assets and maximizing potential positive outcomes, because you don't have a crystal ball. We don't know exactly how the draft is going to go. We don't know how every player is going to work out. So the goal is to maximize your potential positive outcomes, to gain assets, to get not just lottery tickets, chances in the draft, but to have the flexibility to make any move you want to make that you have conviction and a vision for. That is super important. That's what this trade does. So again, my personal favorite scenario is you get Jamison Williams, you get offensive tackle of choice at 19, and then 30, 31, 32, somewhere in there, you trade up, this year's second, another third, or maybe next year's third, whatever, figure it out, hop back into the bottom of the first round and grab either Howell or Ritter. I really like Howell, but Ritter is nice too. I could see either of them after a year of seasoning developing into a very nice NFL quarterback, and they'll be a much nicer NFL quarterback if they have Michael Thomas, Alvin Kamara. Pick your free agent tight end next year, because they're probably going to bring one in, and they'll have the cap flexibility to do that, which we're going to get into that here in a second. And Jamison Williams, again, in this hypothetical, now what you have is you have enough structure of talent around that quarterback that they have the opportunity to have early success. And this is, by the way, how a lot of these young quarterbacks that get picked up in the second, third, fourth round, like Dak Prescott's a great example of this. Dak Prescott was not anything remotely close to $100 million quarterback his first year. I know he won Rookie of the Year. He won Rookie of the Year because of his position. Zeke was the Rookie of the Year that year. Zeke was the whole thing that offense went behind. Zeke was their best player. He was the best draft pick. He had by far the biggest impact. Dak's success was built off of Zeke in the running game. But because he had success, because he had Zeke to rely on, because they had some weapons, what that gave Dak the ability to do is in subsequent seasons to build and add on his skill set. His development didn't stagnate because of the lack of talent around him. And that's what actually frequently happens to talented young quarterbacks that go to bad teams. Their development stagnates because of bad coaching, but also because of lack of opportunity. Not opportunity to play, but opportunity to succeed, have success, and build on it. The Saints are actually creating a situation where they have multiple avenues to create that. You have a good defense. You have what could be a good running game if you can fix the offensive line and add another running back, but running backs aren't super hard to find. And now you have the assets. Now we're going to talk about briefly the other part of why I love this so much. It's not just the flexibility, but it also is, this is the first move that has happened this offseason that shows a clear vision for creating a plan for the future. This is not a reactionary move. This is not just about gathering assets and achieving flexibility, which as has been established here, this really does in multiple ways. You have now multiple paths you can go down where no matter which of these routes you have to choose, it's a route that makes sense and there's a reasonable expectation of success. That is great on in and of itself, but also if we look at the rest of this trade, you give up next year's first. Well, we have a lot of cap space this year, and a lot of that cap space is going to roll into next year. So the books are going to be clean, which means they have the opportunity to be buyers in free agency. So yes, we can't get a first round pick, but we can get a first round pick equivalent impact to the team in free agency because we have the ability to be buyers because we've cleaned up the books. But we kept our second next year. So you still can get a second and a third. So you still have the ability to add young, cheap talent to fill in the middle class and even the upper middle class of the roster. But because next year you're rolling over this cap space, you have the ability to be aggressive buyers in free agency. Then you go into the next year. We have our first round pick again, which means you have the ability to be hyper aggressive. Keep in mind, that's 2 years from now. Jameis Winston's on a 2-year deal. If you grab a quarterback this year, great. You're now on a 5-year plan, most likely. But if not, you load up at offensive tackle, wide receiver, et cetera, et cetera. Jameis is on a 2-year deal. You get all of this roster talent, but 2 years from now, you have once again a full allotment of picks. So if you have a ready-made roster that's just missing a quarterback, whether it's a free agent, a trade for an established veteran, where you give up a shit ton of picks to go get them, but you have a ready-made roster so you don't care, or packaging a shit ton of picks to go get another rookie quarterback, but this time something in the top 5 where you get to pick your guy. You have now created a realistic scenario where all of these things can happen and they can happen organically. You can make the right picks this year. You can be aggressive in free agency in later years. So you're okay with having less draft capital in those years because if you hit on these picks, whether packaging to go get a super player, super talented top guy, most important position, whatever it is, you're packaging them to get a more impactful talent or getting 2 top 20 players to really fill out the roster and address some of those holes. Like if you got a really good wide receiver and a really good tackle, your need to have a great quarterback to be a competitive team goes down. You have floor raisers. This is by far and away the very first thing the Saints have done this offseason that gives me hope for the future, not only from the perspective of these are smart moves, banking on your defense, like, oh, we have a great defense, we can win on defense, and letting Marcus Williams go for a significantly inferior player coming off of an Achilles injuries with a looming suspension was not a smart move. They made the best of a bad situation. Letting Teron Armstead go without signing another tackle or having another tackle in-house on the roster to replace him that you can rely on, not a great move. It might work out, but not a great move. Signing Andy Dalton to a deal that makes you lose likely the compensatory pick that you would have got for Teron Armstead leaving, dumb move. So not a ton of things to be super optimistic about or to, frankly, see any type of vision that shows this team understands where they are as a roster, where their space is in the NFL, and what it's going to take to get to where they want to be. You can't guarantee you're going to get there. We can't analyze the future before we get there. But what we can analyze is how are they shifting the margins? Are they putting themselves in the position to be flexible, to be aggressive, to choose when to be aggressive? The desperate team rarely is the team that is able to turn the organization around and have success. And make no mistake, this is a team in decline. They do need to turn things around. They're going to have a shorter, easier turnaround because they're still a good roster. They have a lot of talented players, but there's stuff to turn around. This move really puts them in position to be able to make a number of different choices and have viable options, a viable path for success, regardless of which of those paths they go down. That's why I like this so much. This is a positive. I'm very happy about this. Really, really glad that they got this done before the draft. Again, this is all about maximizing assets, but through long-term flexibility. They can go a dozen different ways with this, and all of those paths make sense. Huge fan. If you enjoyed this, like, comment, subscribe, all the YouTube stuff. Really appreciate it for everybody that's done that. And if you disagree and you think this is a horrible move or the Saints got fleeced or any of that, feel free to put this down in the comments section.